That's right, we're doing this video first. Why? Well, let's just say that one of the requested reviews is on something so bad, I feel it best to save it for last. For while today's movie is bad, I doubt it'll be the worst thing you'll see this month. With that said, let's talk about what got picked. As you know, I asked my patrons to vote on any of the listed films in the Tom and Jerry franchise. That is, the one theatrical film and the many direct-to-video films. Minus one that I did with Huey but overlooked when I made that poll. And the one that got the most votes was Tom and Jerry the movie. Long after the last Tom and Jerry short was released, September of 1967, was known to have been a lead animator for How the Grinch Stole Christmas, while also having produced animation for The Simpsons and the like, ended up producing and directing the first feature-length film to feature Tom and Jerry. Now, I think we all know that Tom and Jerry's biggest strength is in its slapstick. And while its humor is subjective as all types of it, it's easy to see the appeal and how it's timeless enough where you could work it to modern day audiences. The problem is that unlike Scooby-Doo, which would adapt to the times, here it seems that whoever works these characters can't seem to work in the charm they once had. It's even more disappointing given how this film turned out. And how did it? Let's find out. This is Tom and Jerry, the movie. Now it's worth mentioning that Joseph Barbera, one of the creators of Tom and Jerry, was a creative consultant for the movie. While I do have to question the decisions of this movie, you could at least see they kept the slapstick part of them during the opening credits and the opening scene. And as we can see, it seems Tom's owner is in the middle of moving out because there's going to be an apartment complex built on the old site. Unfortunately for them, their slapstick gets them left behind. Uh-oh, better give chase! Okay, to be fair to this movie, it does seem like, at first, it would seem like something that Tom and Jerry would do. There's not as much energy to it, but just because it's a slow start doesn't mean it can't pick up later. Like, okay, roughly the first 10 minutes of this movie are the closest to being like in the show. It's what they choose to do instead after those minutes that things begin to fall apart from being a Tom and Jerry movie to a generic 90s animated movie. And it begins with this character.
First time out in the cold, right? And instead of being pals, you're fighting like a cat and a mouse.
This is Pugsy, voiced by the late Ed Gilbert. And yes, he does sort of remind me of Poochie. I wouldn't be surprised if he was the inspiration for him. After all, he's one of the reasons this movie gets derailed. How? Just listen to his dialogue.
I've been on the streets 2 years now. My owners left me behind when they moved. The name is Pugsy. What's yours?
I'm Tom.
I'm Jerry.
You talked!
Now to be fair again, let me clarify a few things. First, the two have been depicted as friends before. There was at least one short where the two, from beginning to end, were friends if only because they lived together and had to save a baby from danger. And in one cartoon, they became friends on behest of Spike the dog, only to then break up at the end over steak. And earlier, he did go back to save Jerry before the house got destroyed. He still doesn't like him as much, but in this regard, it's not out of the ordinary for friendship to be a factor in their character development.
What do you think I am, a dummy?
You said it. I didn't.
Hey, you little pipsqueak. I oughta... Hey! How come you never spoke before?
Well, there was nothing I wanted to say that I thought you'd understand. And there still isn't.
Now, it's well known that these two characters are mute, while others are allowed to speak. But there have been times where you could associate dialogue to them. I remember Jerry having an inner monologue during that one Depression episode, and Tom even said this a couple times. And before I even continue to show the next thing that happens, I'll tell you right now that they've definitely had songs in Tom and Jerry before. Sure, most of the time it's from the side characters, but on 2 occasions I found Tom got to lip sync to them. One of them being to this one cat named Toodles, who seems to predate Maid Marian and Lola Bunny in terms of design choice. Knowing all this, why would this be a big deal to fans that Tom and Jerry can speak, be friends, or partake in songs? Let me answer this question by first showing you the first song sequence of the movie.
We two, we're friends to the end, ain't we, my friend? We kinda blend together, coffee and cream. Boy, what a team. You'll never find 2 other guys compatible as they can from.
We two, we're friends to the end. Ain't we, my friend? We kinda blend together, coffee and cream. Boy, what a team! You'll never find 2 other guys compatible as steak and fries.
This doesn't have that Tom and Jerry feeling. Like, at all. The dialogue they have undermines the point of them being mute and only speaking for comedic effect. The friendship they gain goes on for the entirety of the movie, and the slapstick we do sometimes get isn't nearly as good as the opening or ending of the movie. Plus, the songs feel like every 80s and 90s animated film out there. I'll give them the benefit of having some good animation, as that's a thing I often admire in these films. But the way things are, it seems like all they did was make a generic movie but slap Tom and Jerry into it to garner viewers. You could literally replace the two with anybody you want and you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And you might be wondering, how could they keep up their usual shtick that they normally have throughout the entire movie? Well, look at a movie like Shaun the Sheep. That film is based off stop-motion shorts that follow a certain formula, but is extended to that of a feature-length film. Even so, they could work in a plot that's more elaborate than what they normally do, without it detracting from the charm of the source material. If this movie were like one big road trip to try and catch up to the family that left them, but threw in all kinds of odd situations and chances for creative slapstick humor, that might have worked better in this movie's favor since it'd be a string of shorts tied into one film. You could still have all the chaos brought on from the shorts, but in an hour-and-a-half film. And sure, they could keep the friendship arc in. It could have been a rivalry, but one where despite the shenanigans, they can still become friends through humor. But they go even further to make this more like a generic animated movie than what could pass as Tom and Jerry material. Before I forget though, I should mention that Tom is voiced by Richard Kind, who we just saw die in Spy Mate, and Jerry is voiced by the late Dana Hill in her last theatrical role. Anyway, while foraging for food, the two attempt to engage in humor, though the dialogue kinda dampens things.
What's the matter? You have to hide me in a flower pot? I'm gonna nail you to the wall when I get out of here, Tom. Come on, fight fair!
Pugsy and his flea friend get taken by 2 dog catchers who wear bandit masks for some reason. But then as Tom takes the opportunity to eat, he gets attacked by alley cats who threaten him and immediately follow into a song.
What do we care about nice? What do we care about sweet?
I don't know, were you seriously listening in on their conversation about friendship earlier? If so, why didn't you do this when all of them were together? Looks like Jerry to the rescue before this becomes the lamer version of Cats the Musical. Eventually, they see this little girl who seems to be heading somewhere, and they follow her down. Let me guess. You're going to be the Anne-Marie of the movie and not explain how you have animal speech?
Oh, I thought you were somebody else. I thought you were following me.
Yep. Robin, voiced by Andy McAfee, is the other reason why this movie feels less Tom and Jerry-like and more like someone else's original story. Robin apparently lost her mother as a baby, and her father is believed to have died recently while exploring somewhere. And since her aunt is as evil as the aunts in James and the Giant Peach, she ended up running away. Now, how can you make this plotline funny enough to allow Tom and Jerry to be themselves without seemingly forced onto what's supposed to be a sad moment? You can't. This is the kind of plot you might see elsewhere, but doesn't fit here. The only difference? Tom and Jerry are the ones who don't fit in. While it looks like they're concerned enough where she should head home, it does give them the chance to pretty much get a new home as well. Meanwhile...
Oh, my poor little Robin! Oh, find her, officer, please! The poor child!
Yeesh, now I'm reminded of Beatrice from Alvin and the Chipmunks. Another thing too is that the character designs for everyone seems a little jarring. I mean, yeah, it's been years, so obviously in the way of Tom and Jerry characters, we'd get a different style eventually. And while Tom and Jerry themselves are okay looking, some of these human characters look like they come from different films, making me think that at one point this was meant to be something else before they put in Tom and Jerry. And some just look creepy. You'll see an example of one later. As for these two, well, Aunt Pristine is voiced by Charlotte Rae, while Mr. Lickboot, yes, really, is voiced by Tony Jay. Apparently, they're keeping Robin with them for the sake of having her father's trust fund, and are very desperate about it. Why? What motive could they possibly have for doing this?
We'll be
Don't say it!
poor,
Penniless!
bankrupt.
No more money?
We've got to have money.
The most generic motive in the world. Money. But don't worry, there's a song to further emphasize their need.
Money is such a beautiful word.
I know.
It soars in my mind.
And there's the drugs kicking in. Seriously, I know how these songs can get in a lot of these films, but that doesn't mean you have to rely on visuals to get our attention. Because if the song itself is bad, then I'm still going to call it bad. Anyway, Tom and Jerry help bring Robin home, and of course they're allowed to stay. Little do they realize that when a little girl tells them that their aunt is bad and calls them names, she freaking means it! Not like it matters. After this sequence, they'll be kicked out anyway. I feel as though this might have worked if this was just a stop in the road to their real destination, because here they get a chance to eat in a fancy house before they hit the road. Instead, it's the home of a little girl they have to save later, and it's the focus of the movie. So Pristine decides to give the two to someone named Applecheeks. Yes, these names blow. Who she claims will take better care of them than being here. But little does she know, Jerry ends up spying on her and Lickboot afterwards.
Well, his daughter Robin for one, and our creditors for another.
The point is, Daddy Starling is still alive.
Okay, so the father is alive after all. This has turned from evil aunt abusing their child to evil aunt holding them hostage for money. They try to show Robin the telegram but get caught and taken immediately to Applecheeks. Well, he doesn't seem too bad. Why did we have such a bad feeling again?
God's little creatures with sweet and furry features. Four-legged friends I would go to the ends of the earth to protect. God's little creatures, they have so much to teach us. Men like myself put their lives on the shelf to be kind to our pets.
Seriously, he doesn't sound too bad. And there it is.
Yes, animals are business, a money-making business. I kidnap, buy, and sell 'em for their owners up and tell 'em. I make outrageous oodles from peaks and palms and poodles.
10 grand a day, those rich old fools will pay.
Not too bad. Though it seems to end abruptly before it gets any good. They meet Pugsley again, and together they figure a way to get out by pressing all the buttons to open the cages and...
Hello, all you happy people.
That was a terrible cameo drop. And they end up escaping the crazed man whose teeth can be seen in their entirety. We get one song sequence involving Robin that's passable.
Of course I do, more than now.
Yet another reminder that this might have worked better if it weren't a Tom and Jerry flick, just before our heroes return to deliver the news of her father being alive. So it's off to Tibet, or at least try to get there, and now I'm starting to see the parallels to the Rescuers film, in that both have terrible guardians. They evade capture, only a little later to get hit by a boat. In the meantime, Lickboot decides they should put a bounty out for... how much?
$1 million.
But we don't have $1 million.
I know. That's why it's so sleazy.
Oh, I love it when you talk like that.
Should I be concerned? Oh hey, it's her father, who really does look like Indiana Jones. And it's now he realizes she's in danger. I'll say she is. She's about to meet Captain Kitty.
Great wobbling wattles! Avast and heave to there, mate!
Oh! You frightened me.
Oh, sorry, my dear. My first mate doesn't mind his manners sometimes. Hark! It's me bad upbringing that's to blame.
Or should I refer to him as Captain Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs for a hand? Yeah, he lives in the abandoned county fairgrounds and claims to have been famous. Yet his puppet thinks otherwise. So much so, they argue in song. A bad song.
I've done it all. Oh, you got gone. I've done it all. Have you got gone? I played the Boondocks and I slayed Carnegie Hall. Nothing at all. I played Macbeth on ice. And got pneumonia twice.
Sadly, I may have ribbed Rip Taylor for this role during the DuckTales movie review, but his song here at least has... a little charm? He's bantering with himself essentially, and the music isn't as bad as some of the earlier ones. I'm more mixed on it than the other songs, but at the very least it comes close to being decent. Second best being Robin's, but that's a stretch. Unfortunately, he ends up discovering the bounty on her head and decides he wants a piece of that money. Tom and Jerry find out she's here as well and go look for her. Of course, at around the same time, Applecheeks learns about the bounty and wants to get it too. As do these two, who are now part of the final act. This leads to... this.
What the hell was that?
So Captain Kitty traps Robin on top of the Ferris wheel until Pristine can arrive, but of course, Tom and Jerry show up in an attempt to rescue her. Soon it becomes a free-for-all as everyone clamors to stop them while still wanting that money, even resulting in a boat chase. They reach this one cabin that apparently she and her father go to, thinking he'll be there. But Pristine and Lickboot beat them there, and the commotion causes them to set a fire to the whole place. Tom and Jerry end up getting her out, but get trapped on the roof. Good thing Indiana Jones is here to save the day.
Robin! Take my hand! Hurry!
Well, they got one of the important characters. Maybe you should stop and save. Oh, too late.
Friends are gone.
Don't cry, Robin. We'll find them.
And indeed, we see them, with what appears to be the old, "I promise I won't hurt you ever again" gag. So with that, everything turns out alright as they get their new home, and go back to the slapstick they abandoned for the majority of the film. So yeah, is it any wonder why this movie didn't work out as a Tom and Jerry flick? When it's not having them in physical violence with one another, it's instead trying to be your typical animated movie with all the song sequences and cliche writing you'd expect. And with a plot that's so generic, it's like the only way to sell it is to include characters people know about. And while the animation is pretty decent for the time, it's dragged down by songs that don't at all sound very good, either because of the performances or from the lyrics. Honestly, even without Tom and Jerry, the plot would seem like a knockoff of The Rescuers, though I fail to see why anyone would compare it to The Little Mermaid. But as a Tom and Jerry film, it feels like they couldn't decide if they wanted to make the whole movie like the first 10 minutes, where it's slapstick but with a more elaborate storyline from the shorts, to having them feel like part of an ongoing story where they develop, even though they don't have much focus the further we went in. In general, this film is like a mishmash of ideas that, on their own, would work better separately than squishing them together. For when they tried to get the comedic duo to do things in an extensive amount outside their comfort zone, you're going to get the kind of reaction you'd expect from fans, which is disappointment. It was so disappointing that while it barely broke its budget at the box office, it was still considered a financial failure, likely due to other costs that go into film production. Despite this, Tom and Jerry would return to star in many more cartoons years later, and fare far better than in this movie, even if those films are questionable in some regard. In any case, there might be those who like this movie for the songs or other factors, but as for me, I can see why people heavily dislike it. It's a bad attempt to bring Tom and Jerry into a different market, and a major reminder that not every cartoon needs to be brought back or even to be thrusted into something without better planning. I'm the Media Hunter. Media's my prey, and reviewing them my way.
Do I miss you? Count the stars, multiply by 10.